is Kay Ragland, and this is the formal assessment tutorial for the UC Riverside Extension Assessment Practicum Class. For the purposes of this video, I'm using the Wechsler Individual Achievement Test 3 as a demonstration. It's not meant to be a training on the Wyatt 3, but rather a video tutorial showing you the common elements that are common to all, or most, standardized assessments. It's the kind of things you'll see no matter what assessment you choose to give to your case study student, and the kinds of things you can expect to need if you're going to use an assessment. The first thing you're going to find in any box is the technical manual. In some instances, the technical manual is actually a book. In this instance, it's on a CD. The things involved in the technical manual are norming information, reliability and validity statistics, and all of the things that help you know that this is a good test to be giving your student. People that are really in love with statistics, math people, love technical manuals. Some of the rest of us, we're happy they're there, but we don't always look at them. The next thing you'll find, as always, an examiner's manual or administration guide. This is going to be one of the most important things you find in your box. This is the book that tells you everything you need to know about this assessment. Who to give it to, where to start for different ages, what kinds of subtests are involved in the test, what the basals and ceilings are for each subtest, basal being the lowest score that you can have and keep going in a subtest. For example, in many tests the basal is 3. You have to get 3 in a row right before you can keep going in that particular subtest. And the ceiling being the number you have to get wrong in a row in order to stop that subtest. It'll tell you all that information. It'll tell you the information about what order to give the subtests in, what it's for, why you would use it. And before you start doing any assessment, you want to familiarize yourself thoroughly with this book. Read it cover to cover, look through it again and again so that you really know what you're doing. Also, in every box with any assessment, you're going to have all the materials you need, or most of the materials you need, in order to give the assessment. In the instance of the Wyatt, you have a stimulus book, you have an audio CD, a oral fluency reading booklet, 2 word cards, and your protocols. Your protocols are the things that you use when actually scoring individual students. In this instance, there's an examiner's protocol and a student response booklet. And that's a very common format, but not for every single test. Okay. In addition to those materials, you also have the materials you need in order to score the assessment. In this particular instance, you have 2 things. A scoring workbook, which gives you examples of how you might score, for example, the writing sections, things like that. And you also have the scoring assistant. The scoring assistant is scoring software, something that's only been around the last 20 years or so, and for which we are all eternally grateful. Prior to scoring software, we had to do the math. We're happy we don't have to do the math. Before doing any assessment, administering any assessment, you want to make sure you have all the materials. There are materials that are going to be required in order for you to administer an assessment that aren't necessarily in the book or in the box. This might be things like audio equipment, pencils, timers, clipboards, things like that, that when you read your examiner's manual, it'll tell you that you need those, and so you want to make sure that you have them all. You want to make sure that you've really taken a look at the examiner's manual and made sure that you understand how you're going to approach the particular student in terms of their age and the other situations that you know about them before you begin. Before you ever go get that student, you're going to set up your administering, the location where you're administering the exam. Most formalized assessments, it's best to be at a right angle to the student. So if I had a student here, that student would be right here next to me, but not in the same parallel line. You want to make sure that you have everything prepared. If you need, for example, the audio CD, that you have a way to play that, and that you know when in the order of things you're going to need to utilize that. You need to have enough pens and pencils and timers that work to not have to leave the room or stop the exam if you need to do that. Okay, before you start administering the assessment, but after you've already have your student in the room, you want to really make them feel comfortable, have a little chat, ask them about their day, things like that, so they feel comfortable. You also want to explain at an appropriately developmental level what and why, what you're doing and why you're doing it. Lots of students just get told, here, go with this nice person and take the assessment, and it's very, very scary. And you want to put them at ease before you do that. If a student needs breaks, you want to be sure to provide breaks as needed, and you want to follow the script exactly. Now let me tell you a little bit about the script. In some assessments, the script will be on the stimulus book. In some assessments, the script will be inside the examiner's manual. In the case of the Wyatt, the script is inside of the examiner's protocol. And the script will tell you exactly what you're supposed to say when giving the subtest. This is important because this is exactly how it was normed. If you use different words or do additional explanation or things like that, in a very real sense, you've invalidated your exam. So it's best, particularly in the beginning, to follow that script exactly. Again, in terms of the Wyatt, inside of this examiner's manual, at the beginning of every subtest, it tells you the basal, the ceiling. It tells you something called the reverse rule, which means if a student has made a certain number of mistakes, you're going to go back to a different level. And it tells you exactly what to say. In most assessments, the script is in a different color than the other print. For the Woodcock-Johnson, it's blue. For the Wyatt, it's red. But there's going to be a very, very easy way for you to know what that script is and to be able to follow it. When you've finished your exam, you're going to thank your student. You're going to give them lots of wonderful praise for their cooperation and how great they did. You're going to really make them feel comfortable. When they leave, you're going to take out your protocols and you're going to add up your scores. One of the most important things you need to know about adding up the scores is that each subtest is going to tell you, based on age or grade, where to start that exam. Sometimes that's where you stay, sometimes you go further ahead, sometimes you go back, depending on what the administration manual tells you. But you're going to assume that wherever you started, if they met the basal, that everything before it counts as a point. So when you add up those scores, all of those things before your actual start point count as points. Once you've added up all your points in your record form booklet, you're going to go, in this case, to the scoring workbook, because you're going to need to know how to score the writing sections and things like that. It's going to differ with every test, but in this instance you'd be looking at the scoring workbook to determine how to score those kinds of things. Once you've scored all of those things, you're going to take your glorious scoring software, put it in, and the scoring software will magically give you your basic report. Once you have that basic report, then you have to take those scores and put them into the format that's appropriate for the particular kind of report you're writing. And this is going to differ depending on your role, whether you're working in a school, whether you're in private practice, whether this is just simply part of your own assessment in relationship to the student, or if it's part of a grander formal assessment. All of those things are going to make a difference in terms of what kind of a report you're going to write. For the purposes of your case study student, you're going to make a pretty formal report, but you'll find out more about that later in the class. Tests are all going to differ depending on what materials they have, what their purpose is, what age of students they're appropriate for, but again, all of them will have these basic elements. A technical manual, an examiner's manual, and all of the various materials you will need to give the test, as well as some way for you to score the exam. If you have any questions or comments about this, please put them in the formal assessment tutorial forum on Moodle, and thank you for watching.